Hello and welcome to another question and answer show here on Watch It Played. My name's Matthew and together, with your help, I'd love to answer all of the internet's burning board game questions. The first question I have this spooky October is, can a board game actually be scary? There's lots of horror themed games. We know that. Loads of them. Remember when zombies were just all the games? That was a thing. But an actual scary game? No. What makes something scary? I want to say that it's things that are outside of your control, that you just can't stop. And that paired with the immersion into the experience. You know, you think of a scary ride at a theme park. You know, you're on it and it's outside of your control, then you're strapped in and ready to go. It's going to go fast, it's going to be scary. A scary movie is you can't stop the door from, you can turn the movie off, but you can't stop the door from opening, and the creepy Japanese girl who's dead. We've all seen those films. I tell you, I had a stuff. There's a one film, it still creeps me out to this day. And it's the surprise of things that I find scary. You know, like, you can't tickle yourself. And I think a board game is a bit like tickling yourself. You're kind of in control, you're manipulating the things, you're doing the things. So it can't scare you. Thematically, it can be very scary and creepy, but scary? I don't think so. I have been scared by a board game in the past, to contradict myself now. And that was when I was a child playing a game called Atmosphere, which is one of those, you know, you play with your family, you put a VHS cassette in at the time, and you play the cassette, and the Crypt Keeper will give you things to do and is in control of the game to a larger extent. The game wasn't scary, but the Crypt Keeper was very scary for a child. And he was creepy, and I go, oh, you know. So was that the game being scary? Does the movie that accompanies the game count as being the game? I don't know. A book can be incredibly scary. You enter the world when you're reading it, and the world around you kind of disappears a little bit, and you are in the world. And there are certainly board games that have an incredible amount of text to read as you play. But the environment you're in and the activity you're doing kind of dulls the immersion. I think in order to make a board game scary, you do have to add in those other elements, like video elements or music and sound effects and storytelling and that type of thing. Narration can be quite scary. I can imagine a board game with narration that's very creepy and scary. But I think the idea of a board game is the actual activity itself is so abstracted. Even the most immersive board game is so abstracted in comparison to other forms of media. Because video games can be incredibly scary, but it's a much more immersive form of entertainment than a board game, where you are ultimately in control of the pieces that are moving around. I mean, I've certainly felt adrenaline from playing a board game, exhilarating or even like frightening. Like, I've got to get down this path before I get killed, or, you know, even in a push your luck game, it's like, oh god, I've got to get this thing. So you can evoke those type of things, and you can certainly evoke laughter and excitement and happiness and lots of positive emotions and disappointment as well. I do feel that sometimes, as do we all. But fear, a scary board game, I think it's yet to be done, but I'm willing to be proven wrong. What do you think? Are there any games that you legitimately think are scary horror games? And while you ponder on that question, here is a quick word from the people who, in part, helped to make this episode possible. This episode is made possible in part by Priorities by Clarendon Games. Priorities is a party game for 3 to 6 players who seek to find the truth among bizarre choices. Its premise is simple. Ask yourself, how would you rank 5 random items from best to worst, from love to loathe, such as strawberry ice cream, sandals, roller coasters, carbon dioxide, and penguins? Determine your answers, because then the other players work together to try to predict the order you've ranked the items. It's everyone, whether families or adults, versus the game. And follow the link in this video's description to find Priorities, which is available now at Target, in store and online. Pick it up and make playing priorities a priority. That's your next group gaming get-together. And the second question is, and I like this one, it's what's your rulebook pet peeve? Rulebooks are incredibly hard to make, and I appreciate everybody that puts time, effort, energy, and love, dare I say it, into creating these wonderful pieces, these wonderful documents that make the playing of board games possible. But I certainly do have some rulebook pet peeves. Talk about horror. I've seen some horrendous things happen. Some people don't like rulebooks that are too big. You get those rulebooks that are the same size as the box, and it's a big fold-out rulebook. I don't mind those. But first thing that really does bug me about rulebooks is when there's no really clear list of what's in the box, accompanied by a picture. I want to see a list, and I want to see a picture of the things listed, because you go, is this an action card or a faction card? What is this card? What are the cards with this back? I know I've got 8 community cards, but I don't know which of these set of 8 cards are my community cards. Please, just write down what the things are with a picture of it. It makes life so much easier, for me specifically. And on that same note, if your rulebook, and I have seen this, if your rulebook doesn't have a picture, I mean, some games don't need this, but most games do. I need to see a full picture of what the game looks like set up, not just a description of someone setting the game up. I need to see a picture. Why invite that type of ambiguity into your life? I don't mind a spelling mistake in a rulebook. It doesn't bother me. But I was reading a rulebook recently and there was an example of some scoring, and it was score 1 point for every one of these that's next to every one of these. It said this player gets 5 points and shows the example. And I looked at the example and I think that player should have had 6 points. That kind of mistake did bug me. I was like, is there something I'm missing? What's happening? Why is only 5 points? And I looked, and then I checked, and then I asked the company and said, is this wrong? Is the example wrong? And they went, yeah. And I thought, why? To be clear, I don't want to write a rule book. I probably couldn't write a rule book. It's incredibly difficult. It's a whole thing. But still, I'm going to get on a soapbox and complain about it. I also dislike when rule books prioritize brevity over examples. Sometimes it's like, oh, this rulebook's only 3 pages long. Great, you should have made it 6 pages long, because it needed to be, because yes, it was quick to read, but I don't understand 6 things in here. Show me examples. I love examples. A page of examples. Example scoring. Example turn actions. Example how that goes on the board. I love examples. Don't be redundant, but come on. I don't love being negative, but there are a couple others. Another thing that really bugs me is when there is a huge glossary, and this is not necessarily just the rulebook's problem. There's a huge glossary of actions, like, there's a whole bunch of symbology. This means this means this means this. It's all like the card actions that you've got or whatever. This is an attack. This means an attack from an adjacent space. This means you gain 1 of these for 6 of these. Those type of things. Drives me absolutely spare when I see there's a huge 3 pages of glossary. Fantastic. But nowhere else is that information described. I need player aids. I don't care if I need to have a whole player aid that's this big with all the actions. I don't want to be referencing the rulebook every 6 seconds. And I'm not the only one who needs to do that, because everyone else needs to bloody do that as well. Everyone's trying to work out what the heck their cards do. That's not necessarily a rulebook issue, but it did incorporate the rulebook. That's way too much negativity for one episode, in my opinion. So I will just say, rulebooks are fantastic, and I appreciate the companies who spend time, effort, energy, who go the extra mile with their rulebooks, who will, release errata when, sometimes things are wrong and then they are corrected later on and stuff. I think it's an incredibly important part of the hobby that is such a specialized, intricate and delicate job to do. So I really do appreciate the people that take the time and effort and energy to make them. So thank you everyone out there who is involved with rulebooks, because I know I don't want to be. And the last question is, what makes a game a game? This was really interesting, and it came up because someone had linked to Board Game Geek have a criteria, Board Game Geek, the website, have a criteria of what is included on the website and what isn't included, what's excluded from the website. What makes a game a game? And I thought that was fascinating. And I've just been doing some puzzles. You know, you get like a puzzle, like a puzzle box thing to solve, or even a jigsaw puzzle or anything like that. It's like, well, why isn't this a game? Why is this a puzzle and not a game? Some games are puzzles. You see what I'm saying here? So I checked what Board Game Geek had said about this that was in this link. And it says, most of us feel that they know what a board game is, but there are various items that are hard to classify and that not everyone will agree on. Moreover, some activities that some people may consider games are out of the scope of Board Game Geek. Here we list the criteria that are currently used to determine if a game is in scope. Likely as new items come up, new criteria will be added. And they have this core criteria. These are the main criteria that are used to determine whether a board game is in the scope. Because in the argument for, is a puzzle a game? They said one of the main things that a board game has to include is winning and losing. You have to be able to win or to lose. And I thought, well, with a Rubik's Cube, you can win or lose because you can either solve it or not solve it. So that doesn't make it not a game, but some of the other requirements are very interesting. They also say played on a tabletop more or less in brackets. You know, we always say, well, why is darts not a board game? Because you have a darts board, but it's not played on a tabletop. But then you've got something like Two Rooms and a Boom, which is a game, which doesn't have a tabletop. You literally play it in 2 rooms. Oh gosh. That also brings in darts is actually used as an example because darts, it has to be portable and you have to be playing darts in front of a dartboard which arguably is attached to a wall somewhere. I mean, yes, you can take your darts board with you, but that's not really a normal thing. So it has to be like a Subbuteo table, like a table of football that you've got, like a foosball table. That's not a board game, even though it is played on a board because the table is literally played on a table, but it's not portable, so it doesn't count. But as far as a puzzle goes, and this is really what the question the original user was asking about, was it can't be, they say, they have here, it literally says solitaire puzzles are out of scope. They have a prohibition against solo solvable puzzles, and they use Rush Hour, the little car game, and Rubik's Cubes. And the reason for that is because there is a set way that puzzle can be solved. And with a puzzle, like a puzzle box I was playing, the combination on the lock that I was using, that's never going to change. Once that's solved that once, I can't solve it again because the puzzle is done. The thing that changes the puzzle-based board games is the randomness that's added in. So the game number 9, that's a puzzle game. You have to puzzle out the pieces to score the most points. But the way that the pieces are pulled out is random. So it means the puzzle is different every single time. There's no algorithm to follow. You just have to kind of work the best that you can with the setup that you've got. And the other thing is that they mentioned this slightly as well, is that if 2 people are solving Rubik's Cubes at the same time, then that kind of would count as a game. Because while there's a formulaic way to solve it, arguably most of us don't know what that is first and foremost. But the act of competition of some way makes it into a game. Of course, we've got co-op games where we're competing against the game itself, and you can argue that a puzzle is competing against the game itself, but I think it's funny, right? And it's a fun, never-ending argument that people are going to have about certain things. It's one of those feelings, right? In our heart of hearts, you kind of know whether it's a game or it's not. And the second point is, why argue? If someone says this is a game, this is a board game, I just say, sure is. And if someone says this isn't a board game, I go, whatever you say, because it doesn't matter. If someone thinks 10-pin bowling is a board game and they want to argue till they're blue in the face, who am I to stop them? Go for it. Whatever you say, you say. But can we please just bowl? Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. I hope everyone's having a wonderful Halloween. I think this episode will be releasing right around then. I appreciate you all so much. If you've got any fantastic answers or rebuttals that you want to add down in the comments below, then please, I can't wait to see them. And until next time, bye everyone.